This forgotten Anna Faris slasher from 1999 is the perfect movie to watch after Hard Eyes. With horror fans currently showing Hard Eyes quite a bit of love, there might be no better time to shed some light on the largely forgotten Lover's Lane. Featuring Anna Faris in her first appearance in a full-length film, Lover's Lane was made in 1999 and released commercially on VHS the following year. And while Lover's Lane certainly didn't achieve anything close to Hard Eyes' positive reviews, it still makes for an interesting companion piece. A basic summary of Lover's Lane would reveal notable similarities to Hard Eyes' ending, as well as both films' choice of murder targets, but it's actually the differences between the two films that make them interesting to look at side by side. There's even a noteworthy contrast between Anna Faris' career and that of a particular member of Hard Eyes' cast. But even without diving that far into the film, most casual viewers will immediately notice a key similarity in each movie's basic premise. Hard Eyes and Lover's Lane both feature Seattle-based Valentine's killers targeting couples. Much like AGK in Hard Eyes, the Hook from Lover's Lane begins the movie by attacking a couple on Valentine's Day. The police quickly make an arrest, but he escapes 13 years later to strike again. Since the Hook initially targets couples at the titular hookup spot, this leads to at least one attack quite similar to HEK's memorable killing at the drive-in movie in Hard Eyes. But much like HEK, the Hook does quite quickly move on to kill several non-coupled people who are simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's somewhat interesting that both movies also set their couple killers in Seattle, although viewers familiar with the area might not find it very recognizable in either film. Part of this is because Hard Eyes was actually shot in New Zealand instead of Washington. But while Lover's Lane was shot on location, its use of primarily suburban shooting locations means that those who have only visited Seattle as tourists probably won't be able to differentiate it from any other city. Lover's Lane and Hard Eyes use the same killer identity reveal in different ways. One of the major comparisons between Hard Eyes and Scream is the twist revealing that there are multiple killers, but Hard Eyes is far from the first movie since Scream to include a similar twist. In fact, Hard Eyes and Lover's Lane both reveal the same number of killers. In the case of Hard Eyes, this reveal makes a certain amount of sense to the story. David and Detective Shaw are both lovers with the same kink for violence, while Eli is their fanboy. In Lover's Lane, the twist is a bit more complicated. Ray Hennessy is technically the original Hook, but the other two killers have individual motivations that don't much relate to him. Chloe kills two people before targeting her ex-boyfriend as payback for dumping her, but her father Jack's motivations are more complex. It's hard to say if Jack even qualifies as a copycat killer since he's responsible for one of the killings on the night Ray was arrested. He's now fueled by a lustful obsession with his first victim's teenage daughter. The fact that later victims were also hooking up at Lover's Lane is more or less a coincidence. Hard Eyes and Lover's Lane swap the concepts of love and lust. The targeting of couples in Lover's Lane might often seem coincidental, but that's because of an interesting twist in what drives the killers. Although Hard Eyes never fully establishes why HEK targets couples, it's possible that David and Shaw simply prefer them because it reflects the fact that murder is a baked-in part of their marriage. But despite the sheer volume of Hard Eyes romance movie references, love has nothing to do with their actual motivation. They quite explicitly establish that killing is merely a sexual kink they share. By contrast, many of the couples targeted in Lover's Lane aren't even together romantically. One is having an affair, some are just hooking up, and protagonist Mandy is only at Lover's Lane because a guy bet a friend he could get some that night and convinced Mandy that she couldn't do any better. But while the couples aren't romantic, the killers are motivated by a twisted obsession they've confused with love. Chloe is lovelorn after watching her ex flirt with Anna Faris, and Jack's obsessed with Mandy because she looks exactly like her mother Harriet, his first victim. Jack states that Ray was also obsessed with Harriet, but the reveal that Jack was her actual killer renders this claim unreliable. Ray's motives are the only potential outlier. He targets his victims' children after escaping, seemingly to get revenge for their surviving parents' role in his arrest, but his first killings remain more of a mystery. Jack states that Ray was also obsessed with Harriet, but the reveal that Jack was her actual killer renders this claim unreliable. It's also suggested in a therapy session that Ray invited couples at Lover's Lane because he felt unloved, but this claim once again comes from Jack. But for at least 2 out of 3 killers, the theme of twisted love stands strong. Devon Sawa and Anna Faris also share a bizarre acting connection, with a twist. One of the more interesting contrasts between Hard Eyes and Lover's Lane is only evident from looking at the histories of the casts. Hard Eyes' Devon Sawa should be pretty well known to horror fans. He played multiple characters in the Child's Play television series Chucky, appeared with Bruce Campbell in the horror comedy Black Friday, and gained significant recognition in the horror community for starring in 2000's Final Destination. But the year before he became known for serious horror, he starred in the cult classic horror comedy Idle Hands. Lover's Lane has a 27% Popcornmeter score on Rotten Tomatoes. Interestingly, Lover's Lane's Anna Faris moved in the opposite direction at the same time. Not only was she shooting her role as cheerleader Janelle at the same time Saw was appearing in Idle Hands, but the very next year she spoofed the genre in Scary Movie just a few months after Final Destination's release. That may not have too much to do with Hard Eyes or Lover's Lane in a thematic sense, but it's an interesting bit of trivia for those who appreciate both actors. Lover's Lane provides a perfect roadmap for future horror comedies like Hard Eyes. Although Lover's Lane is generally a straightforward take on an old campfire tale and not a horror comedy, it's also a product of its time in several hilarious ways. It's hard not to laugh at moments like Janelle trying to clutch 3 knives at once to defend herself, or the incredible scene in which Half-Life's Michael Shapiro watches 2 teens lustily grind each other in the middle of a crowded restaurant. There's even a recurring bit that bizarrely suggests Ray's primary motivation for breaking out of confinement wasn't just revenge, but also because he hated the food. The more laughable moments in indie horror moments like this could be promising now that talents like Hard Eyes director Josh Rubin and screenwriter Christopher Landon have helped set horror comedy on a bit of a winning streak. Although they've more than proven they can strike gold with their own stories, remaking lesser-known films like Lover's Lane or simply using them as springboards to new ideas could easily reap a profit. By breathing fresh life into forgotten titles, their fans can enjoy newer films while also discovering a few older ones they might have missed.